There have been a lot of stories recently about job action. Teachers in Ontario, transit workers, other provinces are getting pressure from job action. Muneeza Sheikh is a job action lawyer. She's an employment lawyer, labor lawyer with Sheikh. She joins me right now because I want to put the question to you. When you hear about job action and legislation and what happened in Ontario, people bring up all the time, notwithstanding clause. And most people I talk to who are not my lawyer friends say, what the heck is a notwithstanding clause? So I put it to you, what is it?
So notwithstanding clause, the best way to put it is it's the government's way of kiboshing any sort of action or reaction to legislation that they're putting forward. We've seen it before back in 2019 with respect to Bill 21 that looked at religious symbols, of course, in Quebec. Right, and we saw it with this government, not in the Labour context, but also, I believe it was in 2021 with respect to spending during the election. So it's where a government puts forward a law, they get the sense that it's legislation that's not going to be welcomed, and so they put forth the notwithstanding clause, which is a public policy way of saying no one can do anything about this. We've thought about it.
Who?
Not welcomed by the general public, not welcomed by the opposing party.
The general public doesn't care about the notwithstanding clause. What you're saying is not, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you will, that if they put forward legislation that they think could be struck down by courts, then they say, notwithstanding what a court will say, this sticks. Is that correct?
Well, the government will never concede that the reason they're going to put forward a notwithstanding clause is because they're concerned about the judiciary striking the law down because of its weakness. It is what it's all about, but they'll never admit that. What the government will say is this is something that was negotiated through the democratic process, through the various provinces and the federal government as well. So in the Ontario case, even though we have the federal government taking serious issue with the use of the notwithstanding clause in relation to the QP issue, at the table way back when, this is something that is lawful, it's above board, and the government's allowed to do it. The government will say that we're using the notwithstanding clause because we think it's in the betterment from a public policy issue to protect everyone, as opposed to we're inherently worried about the weakness of our legislation.
You know that picture of the Prime Minister, the Queen, Michael Pitfield signed the Charter. I was 4 or 5 rows right in front of them that day signing it. I didn't sign it, but I was there when they were doing that. The big talk at the time was that the notwithstanding was put in there at the instigation of some premiers because they didn't want to have a court-ruled government. So if the courts say, this is the law, they could say, fine, courts, you say that, but we're the government. We're elected. We're democratic. This is not the law.
And that's exactly the argument, that it's the government that's been elected through the democratic process to ensure that it's looking out for its citizens.
So it's not a bad thing.
It depends on how it's being used, right? It's never, in this context in Ontario, it's never been used to attack the labor movement or the union movement. Now, I'm not saying it's an attack, but certainly that's how it's been characterized in this particular case.
Very diplomatic. Muneeza, thank you very much. 3 minutes. So in 1 year during the pandemic, CBC paid themselves $33 million in bonuses above their great salaries. We need a discussion in this country. We need analysis. If you agree with that, please help us on the air. Press PayPal and subscribe.